We're going to get you now reaction from the presidency. Go back to Nasrec where that ANC conference is underway. Bring in once more our politics reporter, Zianda Ngobo. So, Zianda, the Jacob Zuma Foundation seemingly not going to withdraw those summons. In fact, confirmed by Mzwanele Manyi today. What is the reaction from Ramaphosa's office?
Well, Tepekilo, you'll remember that the response by Zuma's attorneys, one of the paragraphs was they'd made a request that perhaps they get an extension on on whether or not they're going to withdraw either on the 20th to the 21st. I'll bring in the presidency's Vincent Magwenya. So we've had a conversation with the Jacob Zuma Foundation's Mzwanele Manyi, basically saying that they have no intention to withdraw those summons, that President Cyril Ramaphosa is a criminally charged person, and that on the 19th of January he will be in that court. What is your next move? Because in your initial response you'd said that if the former president does not then withdraw those summons, you will institute further action.
Yes, as the end, there was a request for an extension to the 21st of December from Mr. Zuma's legal team. That extension has been granted. However, that extension is for them to unconditionally withdraw the summons because it remains a very frivolous charge. It remains an unsubstantiated claim on their side. You cannot commit a crime after the fact, as they claim and as they allege in this regard. So we hope they'll be mindful of a potential for waste of public funds in this regard, and that they will withdraw that action as well as that summons.
It seems like you're almost trying to nudge the former president to respond, and you keep saying, we hope he will see, we hope they will change. And it seems like from what Mzwanele Manyi you're saying, they're absolutely not going to do that. So where to from here? What are the options on the table?
Well, it remains an error in law. As I said, it remains a very frivolous action. It's likely to result into a wastage of public funds. And in what sounds like we're nudging, it's just that we hope they'll recognize that error and that Mr. Zuma will recognize the error in this regard. But if that doesn't happen, we will then seek the necessary relief from the courts to have that summons set aside.
I think, now the dynamic may or may not be different in the sense that President Cyril Ramaphosa has been elected for a second term here at this conference. You were one person who alluded to the political context within which these summons were issued. You'd even said that it seemed like it was to influence the outcomes of this conference. Your reaction then to what's happened here at conference today vis-a-vis, this court action or impending legal challenge?
Well, what has happened at conference is a positive outcome, not only for the governing party but for the country, with respect to the president getting another opportunity to continue with the institutional reforms as well as the economic reforms that he has undertaken. It's a positive outcome for the country in that President Ramaphosa will continue to spearhead the fight against corruption and will continue to drive the focus on growing our economy. So in that sense, that's quite positive. What the action by Mr. Zuma, to be honest, is a slight irritant and a distraction, quite frankly. One that the president will not spend a lot of his energies on. However, we need to set the record straight in terms of dealing with the abuse of private prosecution processes, but also just, dismissing this action really for what it is. It is political. That view still remains. If it was meant to influence the outcome here, it has failed, and it will also fail when it is tested in court.
So the markets have reacted positively to the news of the re-election of Ramaphosa. If you look at where the rand is sitting, we've spoken to the finance minister Enoch Godongwana, especially when it comes to he's hinted on some of the things that can be done at Eskom. So where I'm going is policy certainty, but also an impending cabinet reshuffle, really.
Cabinet reshuffle, that's the prerogative of the president that he will exercise at a time of his choosing. What's more important is carrying forward with a great deal of impetus the reforms as I've mentioned. It's carrying forward the recapacitation of the state, getting government to be a lot more efficient, to get a sense of urgency in resolving some of the pressing challenges that the country is facing. So in that sense, I will imagine that the positive response from the markets is informed by that sense of continuity, but also the envisaged sense of urgency in resolving issues such as energy, in pressing ahead with the economic reforms so that we can, get more optimal performance out of our economy and get people employed.
I know that you are aware that your political principle is often described as somebody who's indecisive, takes his time, even in moments where things need to move ahead swiftly. So usually when a president gets a second term, they are a bit more, for lack of a better word, comfortable in that position of power. As somebody who interacts very closely with the president, are we going to start seeing some, swift action, him being a bit more trite in the way that he approaches matters, or is he still going to be a process man?
No, you're not going to start seeing. You're going to see a continuation of a very decisive and focused president. Let's take, for example, the rebuilding of law enforcement agencies. The president was very decisive with respect to enabling the rebuilding of SARS, the rebuilding of the NPA, the Hawks. Those institutions are now getting back to their peak levels of performance or to their glory days, and they are operating without any fear of interference. They are operating without any fear of favor. The president allowed the processes of rebuilding those institutions without those processes being interfered. So the president has always been decisive. The fact that it takes time sometimes in government to get things done, that's not a reflection on the decisive nature or lack thereof of the president. He's always decisive, he's always focused, but we are a country of laws. There are regulations or regulatory parameters that he has to operate within, and in doing so it may appear that he's indecisive, but he's never had those challenges. What you're going to see now going forward in this upcoming term is, as I've said, a greater impetus, an acceleration of the work that has already been undertaken, already a foundation that serves as a pillar to these reforms is there. It's quite solid. Now what you're going to see is sort of a rapid pace in getting things done.
All right, I'm completely out of time, but rapid pace is the name of the game for the second term for President Cyril Ramaphosa. Vincent Magwenya there speaking on behalf of the presidency, and also saying that they're still giving former President Jacob Zuma until the 21st of December to withdraw those summons. Otherwise, then they will then square off in court.